My pleasure. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. You probably had the best possible introduction about domain-driven design, but I can place my bet that a few questions are still unanswered. Question number one is, we talk about how important it is to have a creative collaboration and a great conversation with the domain expert. And yes, that's really crucial. But the question is, should you trust the domain experts? And after believing in good faith and after reading the Blue Book, I had this impression of the domain experts are good people that want to share knowledge to help us build great software. No, that's bullshit. The real story is, in many enterprise software, domain experts, they have this problem. They live in silos. They just really, really great experts in what happens in their own silo. They have a very limited understanding of what happens in somebody else's silo. Which brings to the underlying knowledge about the problem is something fragmented like, yeah, this map. Just like somebody knows stuff, somebody knows a lot of stuff. There are areas where nobody knows. There are areas where some people left the company, and some areas are still mystery. So you cannot assume, that was a really, really naive error of every person in software development, like we are just translating requirements from the business people and turning them into software. No, that is not happening, because the knowledge about the problem domain is not that. It is sophisticated. It's just not ready to be turned into software. It just like works inside the silos. It doesn't have to be consistent across the whole organization. The second thing is, a solution in domain-driven design has to do with bounded context. And you got an explanation about what bounded contexts are. And the problem is, bounded contexts are great. We're going to have multiple collaborating models towards a common goal, but how do we spot bounded contexts? I mean, there is some relationship between bounded contexts and this fragmentation of knowledge inside an organization. But yeah, grasping what a bounded context is still kind of fuzzy. So what I'm going to do today is just try to see how to connect those dots and try to get a better understanding of the domain, and eventually get something that is the best possible hint about where might be your bounded context. The third thing is, it has to do with actually the next problem, which is the more complexity in the domain, the more is not anymore a coding problem. So we don't have to speed up coding. We don't have to use frameworks in order to just type faster or scaffold code and so on. That's not the problem anymore. The real problem in complex project is understand the real complexity faster, is understanding what is the right thing to write. And this might take time, and it's actually something like a virgin territory. There is not so much improvement in this area. We have tools and IDEs that help us write software faster, but nothing is helping us write the right software. And then that is a key problem. So this is where my game, my tools start to help. So first thing I have to say, just like there's been a lot of talk, a lot of stuff, I'm really happy about everything that happens in the event storming space. One thing to start is there is not anymore one single event storming. It's actually a set of different recipes to be used in different contexts. So we start from the biggest one, which is what is called the big picture event storming. So the recipe goes like this, and just like I want to invite the right people. So this means like all the business representatives, IT people, UX people. If you have customers, selected group, why not? So this workshop is large. It's something that could be up to, I managed up to 20, 30 people. Some colleagues did the larger workshop up to 70 people. On an average is around 20, which means a lot of different point of views in the room, different perspectives. It's not only technical, it's not only business. Sometimes it might actually be even only business, but it's, wide. It takes, something like 15 meters on the wall, and that's what I call unlimited modeling space. And we need also a lot of markers, a lot of tickets to provide the illusion of an unlimited buffet of modeling tools. The scope is the whole. And so the question is, well, we should focus, otherwise we're going to lose control. No, the answer is not. Everybody try to focus. There's a blind spot in the area in putting things together. So I want to make sure I see the whole. How does it work? Simple steps. Step number one, we just say like we have a timeline from left to right, kind of obvious, and then we say like, we start modeling everything that happens in your flow with domain events. Has to be orange. I had a long discussion with Matthias about it, but yes, given in the book everything is orange, so I keep the orange. And there's also some extra reason why this is orange, but I'm not going to talk about it now. Verb at the past tense, even this one is not, it was actually an idea from Greg Young, but plays really, really well because it just forces people to think about a precise moment in time, a state transition, and something that might act like a trigger for a following action. It's actually, there's a sweet spot in using the past tense. And it has to be relevant for domain expert. That comes for free because the domain experts are already in the room. Then it's just like, at the beginning it's actually chaotic and quiet. People don't talk that much. They just brain dump their own stuff on the wall, and then you have to force them, like, can you please ensure this timeline is connected? It's just like there's a causal effect between things that happen on the left to the thing that happened to the right. So people start to talk, start to realize they have different visions, different ideas, different perception of the same problem, and disagreements. Well, we map these disagreements with the different colors and comments and sarcastic stuff, everything that might happen. This is the official story, and this is the comment. Great, the comments are part of the model. The frictions are part of the model. Then we get into structure. We actually, at every step, we ask participants, what would you like to see? But having run quite a few workshops, we kind of know what might be the most likely step people want. Usually people want to see a little bit more structure because, well, it's a chaotic mess still. And, or they want to see who's doing what. They want to see the actors, or they want to see the systems. Well, step by step, they're going to have everything. So we add people and systems, which are triggering a lot of extra reasoning because external systems are constraining your ability to deliver stuff. And people might be different. I mean, you might perform a given action with a given type of user, and a different type of user might do something different, like a corporate customer is different from an individual customer, and things like that. Everything is providing a lot of extra depth to the discussion. Well, in this case, you do this, while this, OK, add more stickers, make the model more visible. And you have more and more conversation, and I have no idea which conversation are going to happen. And it's completely a discovery phase, exploratory, pure, just like, I'm not expecting anything to follow my plan. Well, something, but if I get in uncharted territory, that's great. And that's more or less what you can expect. This is, an exercise version, but actually a real-size complexity of a conference organization. Maybe something is skipped, but some people, that's a keynote speaker over here, and then some other people are invited, and then here we probably had organization with the venue, all the part of logistics, sponsors are probably somewhere here, and that's more or less the flow. Conference is happening here, then we have the aftermath. It's big, it's huge, it's colorful. A lot of stuff happens during one day. So what is the actual takeaway? Thing number one, the whole process is visible. No hidden spot. It's everything. It's 12 meters, it's 15 meters, it's 18 meters. It cannot be longer than this. Otherwise, your organization would collapse under its own weight, unless it's public sector or monopolist. But there's Darwinian selection on the market. If you exceed 18 meters, you're going to die, and that's a good thing. And the other thing is people are forced to understand what is happening in the other business. in the other portion of the business, in the other silos. And we had conversation like, I never realized that your job was so complicated. I never realized I was creating that problem to you because I was upstream and you were downstream, and my little imprecision over here was creating a massive problem downstream. Great. So this is not only for writing software. This is also for, sometimes organizational retrospective, sometimes to put people on the same page. I like to say, like, well, the page just has to be large enough so that everybody can fit in. But it just provides a lot better alignment at the organizational level. This is what we are doing. And sometimes we even like what we are doing, so let's do it better. The other thing that happens is just like consensus around the core problem. So the thing that happens is, given that we have no scope limitation, given that we explore all the boundaries, external systems, sometimes we include even bad weather as an external system, sometimes bad luck. Just like everything could be, I don't want to exclude anything from the picture because everybody else is trying to focus. I want to see the whole thing. It's just like big wall, everything. Sticky start for free. This is guaranteeing me these two things, which is actually probably the same thing. The bottleneck is going to be in the picture. If I focus, I might have blind spot. And the core domain is going to be in the picture. So the outcome is this feeling of yes, clarity. Oh, this is what we are. This is what we do. And even more, there's nothing else. There's nothing hidden from the picture. So it also gives people the freedom to change things because they're not breaking invisible things. The outcome of seeing the whole business is actually awesome for your organization. But we are DDD people, and maybe who cares about the organization? The other thing, but that's very software-oriented, is after all this mess, this is what I see. I see a clear business narrative and the massive blocker, which is usually getting reinforced by what I call, it's actually auto voting. People are voting, selecting the problem. And the thing is, when you finish this workshop inside an organization, you explored everything. You explored all the problem. You selected the most important. You achieved understanding and political consensus in one day. Not a bad stuff. So you have everybody on the company aligned of, this is the only problem worth solving immediately. Take the backlog, kick it away. Who cares about the backlog? We have one problem. Everything else is less relevant. That's my outcome for day one. Big kick in the butt. That's what you need to do. Oh, how do we document this? No, you do it. You don't document it. You can document it later. But like, oh, I have a patient, he's dying. Oh, I need to write down. Save the patient, write down the paper after it. So these change the rules around the bottleneck because the bottleneck is the most important problem. And you can play, yes, no backlog, no estimates, lean startup style, domain-driven design, mixed experiment. This problem is usually hard. People know that this was the problem. They just didn't have the political consensus around it, but the problem was there and was not solved yet. So maybe this means that the problem could not be solved with traditional practices. Best practices didn't solve that problem. Maybe even made it harder. So it's not skipping. Actually, no, I need to move. This is important. Talking about something that emerges during the structure of the workshop, it's just like we see boundaries, we see collaboration. We also see some type of conversation like this one, like, an item needs to have an approved description, a high-quality image before being added to the catalog. If you are an online shop and you're preparing a product to put, that's what you do. So item added to the catalog requires something like a checklist on this side. But the person waiting for this item to be added to the catalog, it just doesn't care about this stuff. It just take it as a given and just give me an URL and I will start referencing this special offer thing. I moved around because that's exactly the same pattern we see during the workshop. There's a person here that knows the whole story in detail, and there's another person here that doesn't care. Do you think they need to have the same model? The answer is no. And it's visible under our eyes. You see people taking ownership of different portions of the problem space, basically saying like, this is my territory, this is my bounded context, and this is mine. I don't have nothing to share with the other person. So they need many different models. And what we are trying to see along the flow is actually the information, just like we have people with a given purpose propagating some information to the next model via domain events. You can do it in some other ways, but events are better. And that's it. That's what I see at the end of this workshop. I see a core problem, and I see the sketches for which are the best candidate bounded contexts for the following development. But then I say, like, oh, what? There is not only one event storming. That was the big picture. Other formats are a completely different game. So the first one is what I call process modeling. The scope is actually smaller. Usually, the scope is around the problem we highlighted, around the big bottleneck of the problem. So this is actually morning after we selected the problem, you, and whoever wants to join. Tomorrow, we're going to find a solution to this problem. And the frame is something like, well, this interaction is going to start somewhere from a command. Some events are happening before here. We have a mystery how to model that. And then at the end of the flow, we're going to have a few domain events and read models to make the outcome visible for the users. And it might map to user stories, might map to features, and so on. I don't want to get into that. The only thing I really care about, user stories, for me, are a placeholder for a future conversation. And this is the conversation. I don't want to have a conversation like I'm taking notes, speaking to one person, talking about something which is disconnected from my experience as a software developer. I would like to have different professionals challenging on a shared model. So that's my tool for facilitating this conversation. This is the moving blocks of this conversation. So the grammar is a little bit more sophisticated than the one before. And we have read models, we have the user, we have a command, we have an external system, just a pink thing, and it might be whatever, from software to organization, domain event, and the policy with or without a user, and a command. So a command is, it's just like, I like to call it a decision taken by a user, just like it forces me to think outside it, not so much to say except that it's blue. And policies are actually more interesting during this discussion. Policies are the glue between an event and the subsequent action. Sometimes it's just like a habit, an organizational habit. Like whenever somebody is asking for something on the email, we answer. Is it a policy? Actually, yes. It's not something we can codify because it takes a human, or maybe you can implement a chatbot. So it's just like take the spectrum. The thing which is important for me is just like there is always something between an event and a command. I just force people to think like you have something. There is a decision. What is this decision? It might be obvious. It might be sophisticated. If you get into it depends, then you get something different. But the reasoning is exactly this one. We need a lilac between the orange and the blue. Find what this lilac is. OK, this is funny, because this is where everybody starts to lie. I mean, they not lie like they are bastards. They lie because they don't tell the whole story immediately. So if you want to make the story click, you just need to ask a few extra questions. Just like we have this problem with being software developers, is just, ambiguity does not compile. But it works inside silos. Between humans, ambiguity works OK. The moment we translate this ambiguity into software, it doesn't. So the way to challenge this is the whole spectrum of policies, but the way to challenge this ambiguity, this everybody lies, you can use two wonderful keywords, which are immediately and always. So whenever somebody is asking something on the email, we answer. Do you do it immediately? Well, no. We answer within a couple of days. OK, that's a different story. Do we do it always? Well, no. If we think like it's spam, we don't even bother answering. OK, now we have the real policy. OK. The other thing that we do at in this phase, we actually do challenge the value. We make the value visible. And say at every step we are creating value or destroying value. So this is something which is getting a little bit far away from software development, a little bit more into service design, user experience, but we want to have this collaboration at the same table. So we make value visible, and sometimes it's money, sometimes it's other stuff. So these were the things that may be involved in submitting a talk to a conference, just like, yes, I have been accepted, and yes, I'm happy because they're giving me back the information, but at the same time, I'm missing some information, so I might be stressed. The moment they publish my talk on the website, my reputation increase, but if I don't prepare the talk in advance, I'm gonna suffer from loss of sleep hours. Yeah. I have no idea what these currencies are going to be. I just want to make them visible. I want people to discuss about value created and generated. We are designing the process, we are designing the software, and we are talking. We just want to be sure that everybody agrees. In something like, I mean, this slide is beautiful. I spent a lot of time choosing the colors, so please appreciate it. But the key thing, it was not designed on purpose about even storming, but that's one of the best results I got. It's just like I can have people with different backgrounds around the same table modeling together. I don't have to have somebody modeling the customer journey and then handing off the wireframes to the development team. Just like you can do it together. No reason to do it in stages. And it's fun, but it's not necessarily easy because it's here. It's just like a discovery process, like big picture. It's just like visualizing friction and descent, so we don't have to agree. When designing, we need to agree. And this is making things a little bit harder. So, yeah, we need this. We need the model and consensus. We have it, but consensus around the solution is a different job. It's also an ego management stuff and all this stuff. It actually gets harder when we get into software design, which is not that different from process modeling, but includes, yeah, actually software design, and which is a cruel sport. I don't know if you ever been part of a fight between two software architects. These are the type of people that which are smart, they agree on 99% of the other person says, and they focus on the missing 1%. And on this 1% where we disagree, you want to destroy your opponent because, well, he's an idiot because my solution is smarter. And this is part of the problem because when we get in solution space, it becomes the ego management. The second problem is this one. We try to get our software understanding as close as possible to the business, but at a given moment, somebody's going to pronounce the word aggregate, and the business doesn't care about it. That's not the business problem anymore. Value for users, yes, it is. Aggregates, no, it's not my problem. So don't force the business people to be part of your aggregate discovery process, because if they smell like you're using me to discover your aggregates, please do your job. I will keep doing mine. So yes, that's a little risk. And I was part of the problem because that's what I said in my original blog post. But that was 5 years ago. So yeah, I'm not trying to pretend like, yeah, it's not my responsibility. We are still trying to model in color puzzle. Let me clarify what I mean for color puzzle. It's just like, I'm not only defining the legend and the meaning of these things. I'm saying like the pattern for modeling this stuff. It's just like if you have a green, then you need a little yellow, then you need a blue. After the blue, you can have a yellow or an external system, which is pink. Then you have an orange. So it's just like kids playing with the toy train. Something like this. It doesn't have to be really, really complicated. Don't overthink. This is not UML. It's just like a color chain. Baby can do it. Kids can do it. Same starting point, that's the flow to discover, is more or less the same complexity, well, plus we started to talk about software. And we have this new thing, the aggregate, and we are not even trying to name it the aggregate, but we are focusing on state machine, focus on behavior, the data. It's funny, there's most of my job when facilitating this part has to do with managing naming. Everybody wants to give a name as early as possible. And then if you listen to the language, but the best result was a group that was talking about 11 different concepts. And by keeping it simple, was using only 2. and was a little bit too much of a Darwinian selection. You're mentioning clever concept. You're using only 2. I don't think your model is really good. So one of the things you might do, if you can solve the problem with 2 aggregates, try with 3. I mean, you already have a solution with 2. That takes some time and try with 3. Maybe try with 4. And you're going to discover that you need 6 for the actual solution. And the other thing that happens in the process is slowly the ubiquitous language starts to pop in, because day 1 was messy and, brittle, and now we are slowly injecting precision, slowly. And, but then we start to see symmetries. There's something that opens something here. I need to be this thing to be closed there. I don't know what is the name, but it's just like a parenthesis do mean something, or complementary reaction, or the fact that something which is not symmetric, and then we have to close it. Trying just to inject a solution that is not working. That's premature optimization. That's exactly the thing that we want to avoid. And the measurement of success is this one. How much thrashing do you do during the workshop is probably a good predictor of the quality of your solution. So don't fall in love for your first thing. The other thing that happens at this level, just like even if we use something like 500 orange sticky notes on day 1, and we feel like, sunken costs, we don't want to waste them. We're going to rewrite them a lot. And one of the things people are kind of surprised, I look like a chaos summoner on day 1, and I look like a very pedantic person, picky and precise on day 2. And still me, but on day 2, I really care about how to write the events, because this precision is actually relevant. And don't fall in love with what you wrote on day 1, because, that was the first expression of a naive brain on a problem space you didn't know enough. And rewriting is actually our best tool. The other thing that happens also, having this discussion with the different experts, once more, we see the clear separation of the bounded context, because we see the different needs. We see the different people in action. I need this. This is my process. The ownership is visible. And basically, at the end of this modeling session, we should have everything. Key information becomes visible, sometimes as domain event available to the listeners downstream, sometimes as read model, so where we need to find a source for information. Again, thrashing. So this is the problem I mentioned before. Hard problems don't have an obvious solution. If you knew that we had a problem there, and if you have the smart brains inside the company, and if you didn't find the solution, don't go for the obvious one. Do you really think organizations are going to leave a stupid problem where millions are burned every year, where the solution is stupid? The solution is not stupid. This solution is probably requires some experiments and probably even some failure in the process. So try and try again. Little tool that might help also during the process. This was supposed to be easy. It's not. I need to redefine it. So a read model is basically the information needed for a given user in order to take a given decision. So clicking the button, submitting an order, picking a given item, adding it to the cart. And it's not just data. It's actually the data you show, but it has a lot to do with the decision-making which is happening in the head of the user. So it's closer to a user experience type of thing. And this has been a big flip in my modeling, because I don't know how, I know how to implement it, but I don't want to choose. I just declare the need for this information to be available. Then how? You have quite a few options. It's just like the path for me is just like first understand the decision. So you got to understand which are the information which are making this decision viable. And there are tricks, like it might be rational, I'm looking at the price, or it might be emotional, maybe I'm looking at the picture. And if I like something in the picture, I'm clicking on buy, even if there's no rational reason to do it. Then you define the necessary data, and you just make it possible. Like yeah, it might be projection, it might be composite UIs, it might be mashup, queries, views, even store procedure, whatever it takes. Bounded context level, this means that the read model is in the bounded context where the decision is happening, even if the data might be coming from somewhere else. This might be blowing up some brain sometimes. During this process, we might have this discussion. Can you use wireframes? Yes, why not? Just part of the exploration. There's not a single reason not to do it. And actually, I would like to skip this one. Yes, that's a part which is happening. So we will improve the design iteratively. There's something relevant here, like I mentioned hotspots, like the notes, the comments. A lot of hotspots are appearing during this design phase. And these are vital. Like everything you don't like about the current design needs to be visible. And then you take one note and you try to remove it to find a solution to improve this. Or you're not taking care about what happens if it's a group ticket. Oh, well, now let's make single ticket, group ticket later. What happens if it's a corporated scenario? Well, later, and then you pick it up. Then you clear one by one the flow of objection till you get something which is working. But disagreement is visible. The other thing that happens is just like, yes, a single solution won't be enough. Just like if you fall in love with the only solution you can make, well, you're already lost. You're probably redesigning the old system. If you can choose between two strategies, OK, you're better off. Maybe one is better than the other one, or maybe they are both good, you just didn't raise the bar enough. So if you can't decide which of the two options is better, you need to make the problem harder so that you have a clear winner. This is my end state. So how do I know that the modeling session is over? Is when I get into the Bruce Lee state. Bruce Lee state is a state of a software developer or of a DDD modeler when he feels like, more requirements, please. It feels so confident about your model that you can do basically everything. Just like you can start anticipating complexity. So here we are, summary. First thing is this one. Even storming is not a single recipe. It's like my pizza. You have tomato and mozzarella as a foundation, and then you can add different toppings with some exception. No database tables, no pineapple. And the second thing is we struggled for years about what might be the best form of the ubiquitous language. We struggle with nouns and verbs, and domain events is actually the best thing because they enable storytelling. And storytelling is naturally consistent because people tell stories, people listen stories, and nobody wants to look stupid. And events are actually really good in building those systems. How to model the whole thing? That's what I see at the end of the workshop. It's actually clearly visible, but it needs somebody to draw notes. Like, I actually don't need to draw these notes anymore. Because, yeah, I see it's just like the matrix after a while if you do it. But, yeah, this is actually what I want to see at the end. This was supposed to be skipped. This is actually the important thing. Like, the thing that I really like about domain events is the fact that I can use the same building blocks of a conversation for really different level of depth. If you look at the notation, I mean, the notation is actually incremental. We still have hotspot, system, and people even down here. But the other thing, which is the connecting link between big picture process modeling and software design, is events on a timeline, the storytelling backbone of everything. We see different things. We see business here. We see process design and user experience here. We see working software here. But they are designed on top of the same language. So we are making the different perspective on the same foundation, something that you cannot do with a data-centric architecture. But with event-centric, yes, you can. So this goes down, and this also goes up. Oh, we have a new event. We didn't care about it. So the summary in 2 sentences of what event storming is actually very simple. It took me a lot to get it, but now I like it. It's just like what we do when we do event storming. We do these 2 things. We merge the people. We split the software. And yeah, that's actually it. I mean, for many years, we've been doing the opposite. We kept the people separated, and we put everything in the same database. I still don't know why. Yeah, thank you very much.